QuaranJazz. Listen while you're home. Hello and welcome to the 31st episode of QuaranJazz. I'm Geisa Fernandes, singer, songwriter, and music researcher from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Your favorite weekly update on what jazz musicians from all over the world are doing during 2020 is starting now. We started our celebrations of 30 lovely episodes last week already. This week, the party goes on, and we are gonna have a very special guest. But before I tell you about our guest, please let me remind you that if you would like to share your stories here with us on the show, drop me a line. Check out in the description of this episode the different ways to contact me. It can be through my website, geisafernandes.com, or through my mailing list if you'd like to subscribe and get regular free content. Maybe you prefer to contact me on Facebook. I've created and manage a group called The Touring Jazz Musician, named after a guide I wrote to keep jazz musicians informed about festivals with open submission processes, that is, those who accept submissions directly from artists. The Touring Jazz Musician on Facebook. Join the discussion. And if you are here for the music, so are we. As you probably know by now, QuaranJazz has its own playlist on Spotify. Let's check one of this week's updates. There we go. No talk, all jazz. This was Glowing in the Dark, and today we are going to have the opportunity of learning more about the composer of this track. And for me, personally, there is an extra reason to be very happy about this episode. This is my very first guest from Brazil. Oba! Saxophonist, composer, producer, and now also a Jazz Fest organizer himself, Mário PC. And yes, it does feel a little bit weird to talk to a Brazilian in English, but okay, we are doing it for you, dear listener. You're welcome. So, Mário, hi, thank you very much for your participation in QuaranJazz. I'm so happy to have a Brazilian fellow here, finally. Especially because you are not only a musician, but also someone who is now involved with the other side of the business, so to speak. But before you tell us about your experience with the festival that you're organizing, I would like you to introduce yourself and tell our listeners about your influences and your previous experiences in music with lots of very important Brazilian artists on tours, etc. So the microphone is yours.
Hi, Jaisa. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. Very kind of you. And for the opportunity to talk a little about me and about the festival that I have been holding, which is already going to its second edition, the MPC Jazz Festival. For me, it will be a pleasure. I hope that all listeners enjoy our chat. Well, my Christian name is Mário Pimentel de Castro Filho. My stage name is Mrio PC. In English pronunciation, Mrio PC. It's not a personal computer PC. It is Pimentel de Castro's abbreviation, PC. I'm from Belo Horizonte, capital of Minas Gerais. My state, Minas Gerais, is located in southeastern Brazil. It is a mountainous region with a temperate climate. I lived 30 years in Rio de Janeiro and currently I'm based in São Paulo. I'm a saxophonist, flutist, composer, and music producer. I started my music studies at 16. When in doubt between saxophone, flugelhorn, and acoustic bass, I chose saxophone. As a teenager, I was very influenced by jazz, more specifically jazz fusion. But I listened to everything. I heard from Dexter Gordon to Mahavishnu Orchestra, through Jean-Luc Ponty, Spyro Gyra, flutists like Hilbert Loss, saxophonists like Dexter, Frank Weiss, Jan Garbarek, pianists like Oscar Peterson. I listened to albums from ECM, Pablo, Columbia, Atlantic, and so on. I heard many Egberto Gismonti albums recorded by the German label ECM, many artists, many labels. I also heard a lot of disco music too, because at the time, the 70s and early 80s, military dictatorship in Brazil, Brazilian radio stations only played disco music. I heard a lot from Deutsche Grammophon too. Anyway, I heard everything. In 1982, I got to know rock. More specifically, the American band Grand Funk Railroad. Everything has changed in my life. I was a dancer. I studied modern dance, jazz, and a little classical ballet. I love it to dance. In 1985, I went to Rio de Janeiro to sing in rock bands at the height of the national rock movement in Brazil. Nothing happened with the major labels regarding invitations to record an album. After some time, I was invited to tour with Ed Mota, playing baritone sax. We shared the stage and studios for 2 years. We recorded 2 albums together. Then I was called for an audition with Marina Lima. I played tenor sax, soprano sax, and baritone, and sang. We toured for 6 years, with a 6-month break when I went on a Caribbean cruise. Madness. We recorded an album together. In 1996, I joined the artist Lulu Santos, singing, dancing, playing the alto sax, percussion, flutes, melodica, harmonica, and didgeridoo. Practically the Octopus Man. We played for 10 years, with an interval of 7 years, in which I graduated in music at Unirio, in Rio de Janeiro. We recorded a total of 5 albums, CDs and DVDs together. In the intervals between Ed, Marina, and Lulu's tours, I participated and produced bands from the national pop scene, indie rock, sometimes singing, sometimes playing, sometimes arranging.
My oh my, this is a lot of experience. And just to give our listeners some context, both Lulu Santos and Marina Lima are artists with a solid, long career, very important names in the Brazilian pop scene, pop rock, Brazilian pop. And Ed Mota is now probably one of the most well-known Brazilian artists in the contemporary jazz scene. And Mario, when did you move to São Paulo? When and why?
I moved to São Paulo in 2017. I was determined to redirect my career. So I recorded my first solo album, Highlights. I had met a producer in São Paulo who, in the best sense of the word, challenged me to produce a jazz fusion album. Oh my God. We started dreaming together, and he was gone in less than a month when he saw the work the project would do. Then it was me alone. I put my unconscious to work and brought my emotional memories to the fore, and the result was Highlights. It seems that the divine put this guy in my life to move the pieces on the board. Interestingly, Highlights is my boy's dream. This album was released by the Carioca label Delira Música. It was released on CD independently and is on all streaming channels: Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, Tidal, and so on.
And how would you describe the music in this album? How would you describe your music?
I describe my music as being very energetic and pulsating. It's a pop jazz fusion, good for dancing, enjoying, dreaming, making love. So I recommend it to all those who want an extra dose of joy, energy, and relaxation.
And how did the year of 2020 start for you, Mario? What were your original plans and projects?
Well, 2020, I was working with a new producer, Mrs. Denise Lacombe, from Asa Alta Produtora Cultural, and we wanted to tour with my show, Mário PC Highlights, through national and international jazz festivals. Jaisa, that's when I got to know your work too. I was amazed at the scale of your artistic and commercial proposals. Congratulations on the work you have been doing. I hope you prosper more and more.
Very kind, Mario. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, I also intended to release my second album, Match Point, in the summer of 2021. Then, the pandemic came and postponed our party.
How was the impact of the pandemic in your life?
In the first month in isolation, I was upset, depressed to see my plans abruptly interrupted, and so many families having the lives of their loved ones brutally cut. I live in Brazil. The world knows everything that happens here, mainly in relation to the current management of the nation. It's on the front page, although they don't deserve this media. Scandal has always been in the news. There is a group of Brazilians who think that COVID-19 is an invention. Another group cannot isolate itself, as they need to work to provide their homes. Emergency government assistance is a disgrace, and many have not had access. The elite isolates itself and dares to immorally determine the nation's next steps. We are living a war without bombs, and we still don't know who they are or who our opponent is. In other words, we are living on hopes. As the days went by, I isolated myself and started thinking about how to reserve this damage of all kinds. I wanted to be at the festivals with my show, but there was no possibility of being in person at a jazz festival. It was there that, on a trip to my nostalgic memories, the idea of building a jazz festival came to my mind. Why not? Totally online. on the internet. If I can't go to the festival, let him come to me. In this way, I started to idealize the MPC Jazz Festival in its first edition. I soon realized that this festival could also include other artists too. And so I started to browse the networks looking for artists that enchanted me and that represented the festival well. There was a great empathy on the part of the invited artists with my proposal. And in this way, we held the first edition. I was the head behind the whole artist aesthetic and commercial concept of the festival. Days and days of work alone. Nothing could go wrong, right? We were very successful. We are now in our second edition. And in 2021, we intend to make physical editions too. Obviously, from a positive perspective of WHO, World Health Organization.
And how would you describe the concept of the festival?
The festival brings in its concept clarifications that I consider extremely important. The fact that not only health professionals save lives during a pandemic and their consequent isolation from people, but also artists who provide artistic content that makes the lives of isolates lighter and more bearable. We also state that artists need to provide their homes and family, and thus they need to be paid for their work, whether in person or in virtual form. In this way, we established the charging of a symbolic value for entering the festival as a way of making audiences aware that nothing on the internet is free. Everything is paid by an advertiser who also pays taxes. Ultimately, all citizens are paying taxes, sometimes for benefits that they will not have access to, as government administrations do their work badly. In other words, the idea that all on the internet you can just download and consume without cost is not supported. If you do not pay for the product and the producer, be it creative or business, cannot afford the costs of a production, that production will cease to exist, be it any product, physical or virtual. According to some people, art is not a product of primary need, so artists would be left in need in an episode like the pandemic. So, the second edition of the MPC Jazz Festival, which is totally international with artists from Cuba, Germany, and Italy, begins on November 1st. We will be online through November. For those who want to know the concept of the festival and access the ticket purchase buttons, the link is www.mariopc.net/MPC-Jazz-Festival. There will be buttons on the Simpla and PayPal platforms for purchase using credit cards.
And how does it work with the tickets?
Once the ticket has been purchased, you receive in your email the access link to the channel hosting the festival. And then just come and enjoy. The payer will be able to access the festival through the month of November and review the artist's shows. All videos are subtitled in English. It's not lives, it's videos recorded exclusively for the festival, shows and interviews with the festival artists.
Great! And what about your work apart from the festival as a music producer?
I have a small studio. I always made soundtracks for all purposes: cinema, soap operas, games, corporations, products. And the pandemic made me intensify my performance in the search for the growth of my network of consumers and businesses. But interestingly, even the transactions that were carried out through the web in this sector were paused. For me, the world really stopped, and I had to live off reserves. The creation of the MPC Jazz Festival was my psychological boat in this whole sea. I ask divine forces that the second wave does not come. It would be disastrous given the behavior of the nation, potential transmitters.
And how is your situation concerning the restrictions? Are you staying at home all the time, or are you already back to some routine activities?
At the moment, I find myself in semi-isolation, trying to resume life responsibly, with new habits of hygiene and protection, and making plans for 2021. I finished my second album, Matchpoint, and I intend to release it after the interrupted tour of my first album, Highlights. With the festival, I have met many people who come to me with an air of curiosity. Many see the festival as a novelty. This inspires me and gives me the strength to resume contacts, make new ones, and move forward with many plans.
Wonderful. Mario, now let's talk about the tracks you've selected for us. At the beginning of this episode, we had the pleasure of listening, a teaser at least, of Glowing in the Dark. And I would like you to tell us something about this song and also about the second tune, the one that you've selected for us to listen in full at the end of this episode.
This composition of my own, Glow in the Dark, brings in a sense all the effervescence of the nights in the tropics. If it had a lyrics, that lyrics would talk about burning passions, endless dawns, intoxicating smells, flavors, endless paths, and insinuating looks, where the only thing that matters is a pause in space-time and total surrender, as if there were no tomorrow. We're going to hear from my first album, Highlights, and the production of this album was intense, a giant desire to bring out something of an intimate nature. It took me a year to produce it, among concept, composition, arrangements, programming, recording, and mastering. For a change, I rolled up my sleeves and did everything myself. It was a learning experience in all areas, an immersion in myself, in my past, envisioning a different future. It all started with a dream and a strong desire for change. The compositions on this album undoubtedly represent my essence, a man with hope for the equity of humanity and with a great passion for life. Then you will ask me, what do you mean equity? Where is the social contest in an instrumental song? And I will answer you, that is the key, without inductions. Only the sowing of a proposal that takes up the basis of an exhibition without predictability, in essence, where feeling and reverberating is everyone's right, without judgment. The album, at a certain point in its production process, gained an electronic character that had been softened by the performances of the invited musicians, among them Ivan Payakan on bass and Fabio Canella on drums, musicians who received me very well in São Paulo. On piano, organ, and synthesizer solos, Jonathan Vargas, also from São Paulo, and on guitars, a fellow countryman, Victor Martins, a genius. I invited them to humanize the album. I had in my heart that more orthodox jazz festivals would not allow me to enter. Today I see that I was wrong. The festivals want more and more news, sometimes even more acid, avant-garde, visceral content. These musicians undoubtedly seasoned my album in a human way. I was very happy in both musical and plastic appearances. The artists Aramel Melo in photography and Eduardo Dantas Correia in graphic design gave the final touch in agreement with my aesthetic ideals. Well, Jason, that's it. I thank you again for the space and opportunity. A big hug, okay?
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for your participation. So nice to have finally a Brazilian here. So I really would like to thank you for that. Muito obrigada. And dear listener, let's not forget that this episode is also part of our celebration for the milestones of over 30 weeks on air. And the celebration gets even better when you get a present. Mário was kind enough to send the transcriptions of this episode in English and in Portuguese. You will find the link to it in the description of this episode, as well as the links to my website, geisafernandes.com, the link to my mailing list in case you want to subscribe to my newsletter and get free regular content, a link to the QuaranJazz playlist on Spotify, No Talk, All Jazz, where we will find, of course, both tracks played in this episode, and last, but certainly not least, a link to the Social Distancing Festival, an amazing call for action that took place back there in March. The Social Distancing Festival had believed in QuaranJazz since the beginning, and we are very proud to have the show listed on their website. Well, my dear listener, this was the 31st episode of QuaranJazz. I'm Geisa Fernandes, singer, songwriter, and music researcher from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and it's time to bid you farewell. Till next week, and now, ladies and gents, highlights. QuaranJazz. Listen while you're home. QuaranJazz, a podcast by Geisa Fernandes.